Hey, 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 hey. Welcome in, welcome in. I hope all is well. We are back. It is Monday, and I am excited to jump on, y'all, and talk about our topic today. I hope y'all had a great weekend. I hope you're starting out the week in a good and calm and okay manner. I know it's been crazy these last couple of weeks, just in general in life, okay? So I hope you're all well. Tonight we are talking about navigating intrusive thoughts. And thank you to everyone who voted on the topic. This was like the top voted as far as what to talk about. So thank you all for voting and jumping in. Hi, Mark. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining. So that's what we're talking about tonight. I hope this is helpful. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I am a certified mindfulness coach. This channel is all things mindful living. We talk about all different topics. Typically that's voted on our weekly polls. So if you haven't already, if this is a topic that you want to learn about, make sure to subscribe, make sure to follow, make sure to like the live, and we can go ahead and get started. Oh, I also forgot to mention too, I'm also a therapist in training, so currently interning, pursuing my master's in counseling at Northwestern University. And between being a coach and school, that's why that gives me the warranty to at least talk about it and have these types of conversations. Many times that's the question. So I always like to say that too. So tonight, intrusive thoughts. What we're going to talk through is just definition first. I always like to start with a good definition so that way you guys understand exactly what it is. And then we'll talk about why intrusive thoughts may show up in your life. And then from there, we'll talk about what to do. Like if you have an intrusive thought, what are some step-by-step actions that you can take? And then we'll end with a few affirmations that you can take away from tonight. So again, I hope this helps. I hope this brings some type of information, psychoeducation for you for this particular topic. And this is interactive, y'all. So talk back to me, ask questions. If you need me to repeat anything, need me to go back, let me know. And if intrusive thoughts is something that you experience, let's start with dropping a heart in the comments. Drop a heart for me if intrusive thoughts is something that you experience. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and hi Hiru, welcome in. Thanks so much for joining. Make sure to like the live, y'all. Make sure to share the live with anybody you think can benefit from this conversation. And we're going to dive in, y'all. We're going to dive in. So, intrusive thoughts. What is an intrusive thought? We have these conversations all of the time, right? And we hear all these people talking about it, but you may not even necessarily know what it means. So, what is an intrusive thought? Intrusive thoughts are unwanted, disturbing, or involuntary mental images or urges that pop into the mind, often causing significant distress. They frequently center on themes that contradict a person's values, morals, or core beliefs. Hi, David. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Jessica. Welcome in. Is it Austin? F. Austin? Welcome in. Thank you so much for subscribing. So that's what an intrusive thought is. Intrusive thoughts are unwanted, disturbing, and involuntary mental images or urges that pop into the mind, often causing significant distress. They frequently center on themes that contradict a person's values, morals, or core beliefs. Hi, Constantine. Welcome in. So intrusive thoughts are, again, unwanted. They're involuntary thoughts, right? They're things where they may pop into your mind. You're like, oh, why would I even think that? Like, where did that even come from? Where did that even come from, right? They may be disturbing. They may be scary, and maybe just completely out of alignment with who you are as a person and who you desire to be. while this is normal, right? So while this is a normal thing that happens, the symptoms can be heightened with anxiety, if you experience OCD symptoms or PTSD or any type of trauma. Okay, so that's just a blanket like overview and description of what intrusive thoughts are. All right, now, so a few things to keep in mind. These thoughts are automatic. They're not intentional. So they're not something that you necessarily conjured up or you dwelled on quite yet. This is something that just kind of pops into the mind, right? They will often go against your morals, values, and belief systems. Okay, so it will typically show up in situations to where you are completely like, okay, I don't even like, why would I even think that? Like, where did this even come from? It may be violent, it may be sexual in nature, it may be so many different things. So it is going to be a difference from what your morals or what you consider yourself to be. Okay. Now understand that there is a difference between rumination or overthinking and intrusive thoughts. Okay, so I'm gonna say that again. There is a difference between rumination or overthinking and intrusive thoughts. So intrusive thoughts are unwanted thoughts that pop up automatically, while rumination is what happens when we keep revisiting and analyzing those thoughts. Okay, so I'll repeat that again. Intrusive thoughts are unwanted thoughts that pop into the mind automatically, whereas rumination or overthinking is what happens when you keep revisiting and analyzing those thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are uninvited guests, while rumination is pulling up a chair and asking those uninvited guest questions, right? Intrusive thoughts is the spark, rumination is the fire, right? So that's what keeps the thoughts going. All right. I hope I went through a lot of information there. If y'all have any questions, let me know. Drop them in the comments if you need me to repeat anything. But again, if this is something that you are experiencing, drop a heart in the comments. I want to see. And I say that as someone who has experienced rumination and intrusive thoughts. So I'm not saying that just to be nosy. I've experienced it too. This is a common human experience. Okay, so now after all of that explanation, right? Understand that the distress or stress you feel mostly comes from how much meaning you give to that thought, right? Sometimes when we get these thoughts, we try to make meaning of it. We begin to ruminate. We begin to loop the thought, and that's what creates the stress and the panic, not necessarily the thought itself. Okay, so understanding that the distress and stress you feel mostly will come from how much meaning you give to the thought, not the fact that it shows up. Okay. Okay, so since we got the definition and we know what intrusive thoughts are, I've beat it down to the bone, right? Why do they show up? Where do they come from, right? And it can be so many different reasons as to why. And I'll say this as a precursor, right? The reasons why they come up are not as important as to what you do with the thought, okay? Because yes, knowing why could have you alter a few behaviors and actions to help minimize you getting these intrusive thoughts. But at the end of the day, you may not be able to completely eliminate them. So this is important, but what you do with it is even more important. And we'll talk about what you can do with it, but I wanted to make sure that I gave a precursor because I don't want this conversation to then turn into creating a sense of shame or guilt or even more frustration and anxiety and even sadness and depression. Me going through these things is not to stimulate that. It's more so to give you some awareness. But I want you to understand that this is important, but it's not as important as understanding what to do with these thoughts. I hope that hits home and is helpful. Oh, okay. So this has been your life since, okay, definitely. So I hope this is helpful and this gives you some insight. because trauma is one of the main and biggest reasons as to where intrusive thoughts come from. So I hope this gives you some solace, and then we'll talk about like how you can start fighting back these intrusive thoughts. So why do intrusive thoughts show up? This is where people will see where it shows up in their lives. Anxiety or stress is number one, right? A stressed brain scans for threats nonstop, right? So when your nervous system is heightened with stress and anxiety, the brain is on a level of hypervigilance, right? Where it's being very cautious in scanning any and everything that enters the brain. And because of that, it may overestimate what these thoughts that you're getting to be very valid in fact, when it's not necessarily fact or true, right? So a stressed brain scans for threats nonstop. Random thoughts can be flagged as danger even when they are not, all right? So anxiety and stress is one of those big factors. High responsibility or caregiving roles, right? So if you're in a role where you're consistently having to be on guard, you're a parent, you're a spouse, you're caring for someone else, or you're a caregiver as your job. So like whether you're working at a hospital or you're a teacher or you're a doctor or any type of roles like that, when you have a high responsibility type of job, you're also on very high hypervigilance when it comes to your thoughts and your thought patterns. You have to think quickly, you have to think on your feet, and that's how you have to operate on a consistent basis. That puts you in a state where your brain is going to consistently seek out threat, right? So when you're having these intrusive thoughts that are not congruent with your values and your morals, it's going to heighten the thought of danger within your nervous system, okay? Let's see here. I unfortunately have them quite often. OCD and PTSD is a sucky combo. Yes, I can definitely understand that. That's actually on the list here. Hi, Glitch. Thank you so much for commenting. Okay, we're not doing riddles, okay? We're walking through some very important information. All right, so where did I end? High responsibility and caregiving roles. A level of perfectionism, right? So if you struggle with perfectionism, you also are going to be experiencing hypervigilance in the brain. So because you're striving to be perfect in every situation, your brain is automatically conditioned, right, to look for the threats or to look for the danger or to look for something to be imperfect. So when it comes to the intrusive thoughts, because it's incongruent with your values, morals, and beliefs, that's going to heighten your panic, okay? So perfectionism is a big one. Trauma history, which we already talked about. Fatigue and burnout, which is when you're tired. This also goes back to lack of sleep. If you have like insomnia or sleep problems, it can come up a lot for you because your brain is tired. Your brain is functioning on ground zero. So it's going to have these misfires with intrusive thoughts because of the fact that it's exhausted, right? I talked about hypervigilance when it comes to trauma related. The brain stays on alert, rehearsing what if scenarios to prevent harm. So that's where the overthinking comes from. Like, what if this happens? What if this happens? The black and white thinking, right? Thinking that it's either all or nothing at all. So those different cognitive distortions can create a sense of hypervigilance to where you are now having these intrusive thoughts and you're holding on to them as gold versus filtering them out as needed, okay? So what was that? Hypervigilance, unprocessed grief or suppressed emotions. So what isn't expressed often shows up symbolically in your thoughts, right? So if you have a lot of unprocessed emotions, things that you have tried to push down, whether it be for months, for years at a time, eventually it will start to come out in other ways. And if you are unable to express your emotions or process your emotions, it's going to bleed into other aspects of your life, including how you think and what types of thoughts you think. Okay. So unprocessed grief and suppressed emotions. Hormonal shifts. So women may experience this at different times, more intrusive thoughts at different times of the month. When it comes to like postpartum or perimenopause or menopause, it can increase intrusive thoughts, thinking, and that type of thinking due to changes in the emotional regulation and the levels of your hormones. Right? Men experience this too. As they age, their hormones may fluctuate and go up and down as well. So it's not just a women thing. This is just a matter of when the body's hormones shift, it can create different mental imbalances that is kind of unexplainable at times, right? Other than these hormonal shifts. So keep that in mind. Excessive caffeine or other stimulants. So if especially if you're already naturally an anxious person, stimulants can increase mental noise and rumination. And if you are already increased in, that mental noise and rumination, when a intrusive thought comes in, it's going to be more prone to be heightened with that rumination, right? So that would be, excessive caffeine or other stimulants. Another one would be moral rigidity. So thought action fusion. So just a matter of like you having these very strict morals and rules and rigid rules that you feel like you have to follow, because these intrusive thoughts go against your values or may go up against your morals and things. You may weigh a little bit heavier in those different areas, to where it creates a huge level of an emotional response or a huge level of rumination in the mind. Let me see, make sure I'm not missing anything. The belief that having a thought is a bad. Wait, let me rephrase that. The thought of, or the belief that having that specific thought is just as bad as doing the actual action, right? So that may be a common thing, especially when you subscribe to a religion and things of that matter. And not to say that that's necessarily bad, but if you suffer with a very heavy amount of intrusive thoughts, that can create a level of guilt and shame that's hard to recover from, right? And it keeps you on a spiral and on a loop. So having an understanding of that and how it may show up in your life is important. And then lastly, I would say internalize shame, right? If you already have struggle with self-esteem, if you already have struggle with self-worth, the matter of not being able to forgive yourself or not being able to have self-compassion or self-love, that internalized shame makes those intrusive thoughts 10 times worse, right? Because of the fact that if your mind and your core belief is already that I'm not worthy, when you have an intrusive thought that even comes against even more your morality or your values, it's easy to fall into feeling more ashamed, and allowing that to ruminate, and then beginning to allow that to beat yourself up over time, right? So I went through a lot here. I'm pretty sure this isn't like all or everything, but I would say that this is a good start to understanding like why intrusive thoughts may come up. And understanding why can give you an indicator as to what you can do to help fight those things or to combat those things, right? So it's a matter to understand intrusive thoughts often latch onto what you care about most, right? And so if you have these values and these morals that you hold true to your heart, and these intrusive thoughts are incongruent with those values, that's going to be the reason why it feels so tough or feels so hard or creates so many big emotions, okay? So keep that in mind. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything here. So if someone values safety, love, faith, or integrity, those themes are going to be most likely the ones that are targeted. For example, I have an intrusive, violent thought, but I am not a violent person. That will then cause you to panic, right? Because the thought is not congruent with your belief. So the thought pops up. And then you think, okay, why did I think that? And then you start to panic and then start monitoring and self-monitoring what you're thinking. You then try to suppress those thoughts or try to neutralize those thoughts. And because of that, the thought just becomes bigger and louder, right? And that just keeps going on a loop over and over and over again. And it can be, sometimes it may be very intense, other times it may be more mellow, but it's still noticeable and still there. But it happening consistently can create a sense of urgency. I know we talked about last week, false urgency. It can create a very huge feeling of urgency within the body of you having or feeling like you have to do something about it. And that is what creates that continued loop of these thoughts, right? And these intrusive thoughts. Also, I mentioned this, and not a lot of people believe in this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our thoughts are spiritual, right? And everything we think about are not coming directly from us, right? Not every thought comes from a meaningful or authoritative source. We have to think about what we are listening to, what we are watching, who we speak to, the conversations that we're holding, and where we are spending our time. What you consume the most will flow from your heart. So getting a grasp on what you consume is half the battle. All right. So if you're watching a lot of things, if you're having a lot of conversations that are entertaining these things, you want to ensure that you're guarding yourself, right? You want to ensure that you are very intentional with where you spend your time. Now, not everybody believes in the spiritual. Not everybody believes in God. I personally am a Christian, so I do believe in God. So there's a lot of that I, take on hold true. But even if you're not a Christian, or even if you're not subscribed to any type of religion, what you take in is what you're going to pour out. And so the more that you are watching or spending a lot of time in these different spaces, don't be surprised when those intrusive thoughts pop up, even though they go against to what you morally, agree to, or your core beliefs or your values. Thank you, Prophet. Hi, Mark. Intrusive thoughts and images that ambush me are from the jealousy and humiliation that I have experienced. Yes. And and a lot of times, and that goes back to the trauma, right? The trauma that you may experience. And it's also may come from the voice of your caregivers. So if you go back to your childhood, what are the things that you were told, right? If you think about the intrusive thoughts, a lot of times those thoughts are coming from voices that we have heard throughout life. So if your parents were not the best and they talked down to you, a lot of your intrusive thoughts may be their voices, right? If you had like siblings that maybe talked to you crazy, or if you had friendships or maybe your old spouse that talked to you crazy for a long period of time, the voice or the intrusive thought could be from those voices. So it's not just about they just come out of nowhere. That's not the case. Sometimes they do come from our past experiences, and oftentimes they come from voices that we have heard over and over again in our lives that have told us things that were not true, right? So keep that in mind too, right? If I have an intrusive thought that, hey, you're stupid or you're dumb, well, where did I first hear that from, right? Where did that come from initially? Is that something that, that came from my parent? Is that something that came from a sibling? Is that someone that came from like a friend? Like understanding that not all of the thoughts that you have come from you. And I know that's probably like a crazy thing to grasp your mind around, but understand that every thought isn't necessarily from you. It could be from a movie you watched. It could have been from a conversation that you overheard. It could have been from an old teacher that said something crazy to you back in '95, and it's just kind of popping up now. There's so many different places that it could come from. So understanding that, and even though this sounds weird, but it's very much the truth. Not every thought you have comes from you. Not every thought that you have is truth. And not every thought that you have is indicative of who you are as a person, right? And once you're able to really truly understand that and to be curious about your thoughts versus taking every thought as gold, that's when you start to fine tune how you are experiencing what you're thinking. Okay, I know that probably sounds super deep. It really ain't. It's very not that deep. Honestly, it's not. I just really, and I know that spiritual piece can be a button for some people, but I felt like leaving it out would be a disservice to you, especially based off of what I believe as well. Like I have to put that in there. So I hope that was helpful. If anybody has any questions, drop in the comments. If you think that what I just said is true, drop me a heart, let me know in the comments, because I know I know it sounds crazy, but it's very, very true. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a matter of fighting them back. We're going to talk about how you can do that. We're going to talk about how we can do that. So we talked about what intrusive thoughts are. We talked about why they could be showing up. Now, what do we do, right? What do we do when we have an intrusive thought? So there's a few steps here. I think it's 6. Yeah, I think it's 6. So number 1, when you have an intrusive thought, first we have to be aware and name it, right? Label them as intrusive. Accept their presence without judgment. All right. So understanding that you don't necessarily need to analyze the thought, you don't need to debate the thought, you're just going to label it. Okay. All right. That thought came in. That's intrusive. That's not me. That's not my values. That's not my core beliefs. That's not what I actually believe. So I'm going to name this. This is an intrusive thought, right? Number 2, reject the thought. So it's about thought pattern modification. This is an intrusive thought, not a value or my core belief. This is not from me. This thought is not mine to hold, right? This thought has no authority over my emotions or behaviors. We talked about this before, where our thoughts are connected to our emotions and then connected to our behaviors, and then vice versa. So our thoughts affect our emotions affect our behaviors affect our emotions affect our thoughts, right? It all goes around in one circle. So understanding and rejecting the thought then allows it not to affect your emotions and behaviors. Oftentimes when we sit and ruminate, right, when we talked about rumination versus intrusive thoughts, sometimes when we ruminate on the thought, that then stirs up our emotions. And then once it stirs up our emotions, it then stirs up our behavior, right? So the point of rejecting the thought is to not allow it to stir up the emotions, because the emotions is what's going to create the action. All right. So it's rejecting the thought and reminding yourself that, hey, this is an intrusive thought. We named it as intrusive. And it's not a part of my values, and it's not a part of my core beliefs. So I reject the thought. All right. Number 3, let it pass without engagement. Not fighting it or wishing away, but letting it pass without engagement. I don't need to solve this, right? I let this thought go. All right. Allowing yourself to allow it to pass without engaging. What is engaging? Rumination. When we start to think of it over and over and replay and think of all the scenarios and play it back and forth. That's when we engage it. So letting it pass without engagement. And then how do we do that? We anchor back to our body, whether that be deep breathing, replacing the thought. We'll talk about that a little bit. But deep breathing, gratitude, positive images, and recentering to refocus, reshifting our focus, right? I know one thing that happens when I ruminate is me focusing on another space that is one that's positive, but also something that stimulates the prefrontal cortex. Usually stimulation of the prefrontal cortex is learning something new, singing a song, praying, humming, and stimulating the nervous system. in some form of way, whether that be being creative. And it doesn't have to be something totally crazy. It could be something as simple as writing out, a quick gratitude line, or thinking of, something that you want to draw or to paint, or something that you want to be creative, singing a couple of lines of a song. It's going to look different for each person, but you want to think about different ways that you can ground yourself that works for you. All right. And really being intentional about that, because all of the things that I listed probably may or may not work for you, right? It's all about what works for you and what grounds you. You have to really be in charge of knowing and understanding what that looks like for you. Some people, it may be reading. For some people, it may be going for a walk, and maybe exercising or working out. For some people, it may be stretching. For some people, it may just even be, laughter, having a couple of comedy sessions, right? Watching a comedy special, watching a favorite show, just something that you're able to help ground yourself and bring yourself back to a neutral state, okay? So that's what anchoring the body means. And then number 5, reduce reassurance seeking and replace, okay? Reduce reassurance seeking and replace. So reassurance feeds the loop and fear amplifies the noise. So every time you check or ask the brain, learns the thought is more important. So every time you check in the brain with, okay, why am I thinking this? Why is this coming up? And it's giving your brain an indication that this is an important thing to think about. So as you start giving your brain this indicator or this indication that this is important, it's going to keep looping it over and over and over again. So sometimes when we have these intrusive thoughts, we try to seek reassurance in some way. We start Googling stuff. We start asking people about it. We start watching videos on these things. We start doing all of our research, right? Our mental research that we do. And I say that as somebody who does it, okay? I'm not saying this to shame anybody. All of what I'm talking about is stuff that I have done, okay? We start Googling, we start thinking we got all these different diseases, and then you got, it gets crazy, right? So understanding that when you try to seek reassurance on an intrusive thought, that's going to trick the brain into thinking that this is a very important issue and this is something that we have to solve right now. All right. So reduce your reassurance seeking, especially if you know especially if you know it's intrusive. Okay. Because if it's intrusive, what is it? It's involuntary. It's something that goes against your values. It's something that goes against your morals. It's something that goes against your core beliefs. So if it goes against all of those things, why entertain it? Why entertain it? Okay? So there's no reason to seek reassurance if it's intrusive. That's the whole point here. Okay? This strengthens the neutral circuit, like hitting save on a file, right? So when you're thinking about the neuroscience behind it, right? When you are going back and forth with this reassurance, it's like you're in a file, you're in like a Google Doc, and it's automatically saving in the brain, right? So you know how you're typing out your Google Doc, and as you're typing out, it's just going to continuously save in the background. That's what you're doing when you're doing the reassurance, right? You're reassuring this intrusive thought, and your brain is just consistently auto-saving, which then creates the rumination, where you keep thinking of it over and over and looping and over and over and over again. And what if this happens? And what if that happens? Okay. So keep that in mind. All right. Hi, Aaron. Welcome in. Hi, James. Welcome in. So yes, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. When it comes to, so the thought comes back more strong and more urgent is a big piece, because of the fact that your brain is hitting autosave. Now, the more you hit autosave, the more urgent it becomes. Okay. And it becomes so overwhelming to the point now, again, it's stirring up your emotions. As it stirs up your emotions, it becomes more and more urgent to the brain. So that's what makes the intrusive thought more difficult. Thank you so much, 93 Love, to my moderator. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. And then, so with the reassurance seeking, understanding that the hope is for you not to necessarily seek reassurance, but to replace, right? To replace the thought with something else. What are you going to replace it with? You're going to replace it with positive thinking, but more so, not necessarily something just randomly positive. You're going to replace it with your values, with your morals, with your identity and who you are as a person. You're going to, if there's going to be any reassurance happening in this moment, it's going to be you reassuring yourself of your worth, of your value, and your values, and who you are as a person. Focusing on gratitude, focusing on peace, focusing on joy, finding things to bring yourself back to, on love. And it's not even just like googly love. I'm talking about love within yourself, love for the people around you, pouring into the people around you. If you believe in God, the love that you receive from God, all of those things, focusing on that and repurposing your thoughts, right? Because at the end of the day, even though we have involuntary thoughts that come to our mind, we do have the authority and we do have the ability to determine how long it stays there, okay? And like I said, just because it comes doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean that it's even valid, doesn't mean that it's fact, doesn't mean that it's indicative of who you are as a person. It just means that it has come and it needs to be replaced. Okay, so the way that you can think through this is finding what you replace it with, right? Just like I was saying with your grounding, what are your grounding methods? What do you do when you need to ground yourself, right? And then what do you replace it with? What are the things that you concentrate on? What are the things that you bring to mind when you have an intrusive thought? That type of planning is how you're able to combat these things. But then it also goes back to, what are you consuming, right? If you're consuming a lot of things that are indicative of what you're experiencing with the intrusive thought, maybe it's something that you have to take a break from, right? Maybe it's something that you have to take a step away from. Who are you surrounding yourself with? What are the conversations that you're having? Do you got to be quiet for a little bit? It could be so many different things, but really examining it all, so that way you're able to combat it. Because like I said, understanding what you're consuming is half the battle. And then lastly, know when to seek support. Don't go through this alone, because a lot of times intrusive thoughts are isolating and it can make you feel very lonely. And it can also just make you feel like you're the only one experiencing it. That's one of the reasons why I had us drop in the comments a heart, because I want everyone to understand that this is a common human experience. And because you're experiencing it, it doesn't mean that you're the only one. Right? And so there are things that you can do. There are things that you can put in place to combat these things. But the first thing you want to understand is that you're not the only one. Okay, so seeking support when you need it. If you need to seek therapy, if you need to seek just support from friends or family, if you need to, seek support. There's so many different ways you can seek support based off of what you need and what your values are. But being okay with reaching out and asking for a helping hand. That's ultimately what you want to be okay with. Okay, you're not the only one. All of us experience it, even if we all don't admit it. But that you're not the only one. So seek support when you need it, especially when you feel like it's detrimental to your daily living. Right? If the thoughts are persistent and distressing, if it's impeding on your everyday life and functioning, if you're stuck in a constant mental checking, or if you're just feel like you're stuck and you're not able to progress or grow, those are indicators that you may need some support and you may need help. Okay. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. I think that we have just affirmations left, but I hope this is landing, y'all. Let me know in the comments. I hope this is helpful. Drop a heart if anything tonight has helped you in this session. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything here. I think this lastly, intrusive thoughts aren't proof that something is wrong. Often they're just evidence that your system has been under pressure emotionally, cognitively, and physiologically, okay? So many times it's a matter of burnout, especially if you're sleep deprived, if you just have overworked yourself. There are so many different reasons as to why this could be happening, but don't think that you're broken if this is happening. Just think of it in a way of, this is something that that's an indicator that I need to support myself, that I need to care for myself, versus this being something, oh, something's wrong with me, or it's broken. Thank you for affirming and giving voice to what I have been reading. Absolutely, no problem. I'm glad that it's helpful, Mark. Thank you, Hiru. Awesome. I'm glad that this is helpful, y'all. All right, so affirmations. I'm going to leave you with just 3 affirmations. I hope that this is helpful. Feel free to write these down. You can use the affirmations however you wish to. So if you want to just write them on sticky notes and post them around you, if you want to record yourself saying them or recite yourself saying them in the mirror, if you need to change the language so that way it makes more sense for you, please do that. This is just a framework. And if you want to add more, you can do that too. So I hope these are helpful. Number 1, hold on here. Number 1, every thought does not define me. I can observe my mind without being controlled by it. That's a long one, but I'll say it again. Every thought does not define me. I can observe my mind without being controlled by it. Every thought does not define me. I can observe my mind without being controlled by it. Okay? This is just a reminder that you are not your thoughts. Okay? Just because a thought comes doesn't make it valid, doesn't make it true. You just have the authority to decide how long the thought stays. Okay? So you can observe your mind without being controlled by it. Just because a thought comes, it's not indicative of your worth. It's not indicative of who you are as a person. It's just something that has come for whatever reason: trauma, anxiety, stress, fatigue, lack of sleep, caffeine. It could have been so many different reasons. Your hormone imbalances. There's so many different things and reasons why it's come. So this is just a reminder to not allow your thoughts to control you, but it's a reminder that you control your thoughts. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, peace is my authority, not fear. I discern wisely and release what's unhealthy. That's a mouthful, but I'm gonna say it again. Peace is my authority, not fear. I discern wisely and release what's unhealthy. Peace is my authority, not fear. I discern wisely and release what's unhealthy. All right. This is just a matter that a reminder that you can choose peace. All right. You can choose to be at peace, right? We can choose. Now, does feeling of fear come here and there? Absolutely. I'm not going to dismiss that. But again, you can choose how it stays there, how long it stays there. One thing about fear, I think I've mentioned this before, but the feeling, the hormones that are released when you are fearful are the same hormones that are released in the body when you're excited. So when your mind gets really scared, it releases certain hormones. When your body or when your mind gets really excited, it releases those same hormones. Right? So you're able to trick your mind to thinking that your fear is excitement because it's it's excreting the same hormones in the body, right? It's how we process the thought. So instead of me leaning into the fear, we can lean into the excitement of the unknown, right? The excitement of what's to come, right? That's easier said than done for a lot of different things, but I always like to mention that because we ultimately and often allow fear to overtake us, and we do have the authority to combat that. We have the authority to fight back. Okay, so this is just a reminder of that. That was long-winded, but I hope it hits home. That was number 2. Peace is my authority, not fear. I discern wisely and release what's unhealthy. And then lastly, number 3, I am safe, I am calm, I am in control of my attention. I am safe, I am calm, I am in control of my attention. I'll say that one more time. I am safe, I am calm, I am in control of my attention. You have control over where you put all of your attention. You have control of what you focus on. And oftentimes we feel like we don't have control. We put all of our focus on what just kind of pops in our mind versus us saying, no, that's not where I want to focus. That's not what I want to put my attention on. I want to put my attention over here, right? So this is just a reminder that you have control of your attention and where you put your attention and where you put your focus. You have control of where and how you spend your time. You have control over the conversations that you have. You have control, to an extent, of the environment that you're in, right? Because you may be, and not even to an extent, you definitely have control of your environment. But there are some instances where you may have to stay in certain environments for a certain period of time for whatever reason. So in that, you want to be able to guard your mind and guard your heart and all of those environments and conversations and thought patterns and things. The more that you take control over where you spend your time and where you put your attention, the better off you will be. Sometimes we just put our attention with whatever's in front of us, and that's why we have so many random thoughts of things that pop in our head that we're like, I don't even know where this is coming from. It's coming from somewhere, and it may not be as you may not be as intentional or as strategic as you think you are. And I say that with love, because I experienced the same thing, y'all. It's okay. I'm not any different. So I hope that this was helpful. Those are the affirmations. Number 1 was every thought does not define me. I can observe my mind without being controlled by it. Number 2 is peace is my authority, not fear. I discern wisely and release what's unhealthy. And number 3, I am safe, I am calm, I am in control of my attention. I hope this was helpful, y'all. I hope this brings some solace. Let me know if y'all have any questions in the comments. If this is your first time, again, my name is Debbie. I am a certified mindfulness coach and therapist in training. And this live is every Monday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We talk about all of the different things when it comes to mindful living. The poll was unanimous, y'all. That's what y'all wanted. I think it was about 12. I want to say I think it was like a couple of maybe 10 votes that voted for intrusive thoughts. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Hiru. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you want to get more about Haven Inspired, you can go to haveninspired.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter comes out every Wednesday. Really, it's just a recap of our lives, and then it also has links to things that may be going on, meditations that we post. I haven't been posting a lot of meditations lately. I've been taking a break just to kind of regroup. But still making sure to do the lives. And then also too, y'all, listen, I work full time and I'm in internship, all right? It's been heavy. It's been heavy lifting. I have a caseload of 8 clients now. So it's getting hectic. It's getting hectic out here. But I still have my commitment to the channel. So I hope that all of what I have done is helpful. We probably will post another topic this week because I feel like the other topics were not voted on as much. I think the second topic might have been, let me see really quick. The last topic, Oh, so the second topic was love without performance. So yeah, there was 12 votes. So we could do that. We could do love without performance next week. But if anybody else has any topics that you want to talk about, feel free to go back to the poll and either put it in the comments or vote. And then also to understand, I have a lot of lives. I may have already done the topic, but some of the topics I have been redoing. Now that I am in the program, I have a whole lot more knowledge about these different topics outside of just mindfulness knowledge. So as I'm gearing up and getting my licensure as a clinician, there's a lot that I've learned. A lot I've learned since then. So if there's anything that you want me to revisit, let me know. Other than that, y'all, that's it. I hope that y'all are well. I hope tonight is great. Oh, if you are looking for anyone to do events, I do speaking engagements on these particular topics. I do have one, I think, coming up in March. I usually do like engagements for like women or different corporate events. So feel free to let me know. You can email me at info@haveninspired.com if you're looking for a speaker. But other than that, that's it, y'all. Y'all have a blessed night. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you all next Monday at 8 p.m. Central. Bye.